Greetings, Father Mark signing on, continuing the series on the papacy and the modern world, moving into the reign of Pope 240, Blessed Innocent the XI, who reigned from 1676 to 1689. It took the conclave of 1676 2 months to decide what to do next. The previous 4 popes had all been diplomats who had attempted to carry out the mission of the Church through negotiation and compromise with other powers, which was not always easy. Even with the Catholic monarchies, as we saw. The embarrassing ineffectiveness of the Pope who just died, from their perspective, Clement X, prompted the conclave to follow the pattern of solving problems caused by one type of Pope by electing the opposite type of Pope to replace him. So the pendulum. To replace the diplomatic popes of the mid-17th century, the conclave elected a man of deep personal holiness and piety, a man whose integrity and moral life were above reproach. His baptismal name was Benedetto. His family name was Odescalchi, Odescalchi. He accepted election on September 21st, 1676, as Pope 240. He reigned for 13 years under the papal name Innocent the XI. Born in Como, Italy, it's in the Lake region. Lake Como is one of this beautiful, beautiful territory of Italy. Born on May 19th, 1611, Benedetto was the first pope of the 17th century to have substantial pastoral experience with the faithful, having been appointed Bishop of Novara, Italy, in 1650. In that assignment, he was beloved by his people. In that age of violence, he routinely walked through the markets of his town, visiting with his people, without guards. He knew them by name. He loved to sit down and chat with them, catching up on their families, their hopes, their troubles. People loved to tell stories of his anonymous kindness and charity to those in need. During a famine, he sold everything that was not blessed in order to buy food for those who could not afford the inflated famine prices. He was elected by unanimous vote of the conclave, eventually, in 1676. As a spiritually minded pope, he had the attitude of a preservationist, kind of like, the fortress. The church is a fortress, and outside is unsafe and not to be trusted. Same attitude as Pope Pius V, who felt that the church would best function thinking of itself as a single monastic community behind the walls. As such, as Pope, he showed absolutely zero interest in the dynastic politics of Europe. The only important governing policy he employed was imposing his own frugal lifestyle on the papal court and curia. In this way, he quickly eliminated the operating deficit, paid off the debt, and started to save money in the treasury, for which the next pope would be grateful. In terms of teaching, Pope Innocent had a huge problem left to him by his more diplomatically minded predecessor: the assertion of the regalia rights of Louis XIV, the rights the king claimed to appoint bishops and collect the revenue of vacant dioceses and abbeys. Pope Innocent immediately condemned the regalia rights and refused to ordain or install any bishop who was not selected according to the existing concordat. King Louis XIV retaliated by summoning a convocation of 35 of the most spineless bishops in France. That was less than half of the total bishops in France. The Bishop of Meaux, Meaux, at the time was named Jacques Bossuet, Bossuet, lived from 1627 to 1704. At Louis's behest, he composed what became known as the Four Gallican Articles, which Louis's stooge bishops then signed on May 19th, 1682, asserting them as policy of the French Church The Gallicanism is the national church ecclesiology. Pope Innocent condemned them the following month, on April 11th, 1682, and once again refused to ordain or install any man who did recognize them. So the four Gallican articles are nothing new, merely just a rephrasing of the erroneous Gallican ecclesiology that has recurred over and over again. It's another theological fungus. The articles are relevant here because they were intentionally used by an allegedly Catholic king of a Catholic country as a political weapon to intimidate the Pope. The four Gallican articles were, first, that the Pope has no temporal jurisdiction and outside of his own of the papal state. Therefore, no secular ruler, such as a king, is accountable to the Holy See for any actions in the temporal realm. Second, the conciliar decrees of Sacrosancta and Frequens, which is back from the Council of Constance, we covered those earlier, were reaffirmed. Now recall, the Holy See never recognized them because they were passed between pontificates. After Pope Gregory XII abdicated, but before Martin V was elected. So the Council of Constance was not a legitimate council then, without a sitting pope. Third, reasserted the existence of the ancient Gallican liberties, which were, whatever popped into their mind that they wanted at the moment. Fourth, no decision by the Pope, any Pope, even in spiritual matters, was binding on the French Church until ruled so by a council. So Louis, thinking that this would intimidate the Pope, underestimated his man. Innocent XI was no Clement X. Innocent refused to be intimidated by the Gallican articles, and he refused to back down on the principle regarding the final authority of the Holy See over appointment of bishops. When Louis threatened to take France into schism, leaving the church as England had, Pope Innocent XI coolly replied that Louis should ponder what happened to Adam and Eve when they chose to leave the garden. Louis, angry at this, so then he sent troops into the papal enclave of Avignon in southern France, thinking that would frighten Innocent into negotiating. It did not. Innocent commented that Pharaoh was also confident in his army until it drowned in the Red Sea. By the end of Innocent's pontificate, there were 36 vacant dioceses in France, because he would not recognize the men that Louis wanted, and Innocent had no way to force Louis to accept anyone that he did. So they were vacant. Innocent had to face another problem. Well, not unique, but certainly, striking. A problem of a heresy invented to correct another heresy. The heresy needing to be corrected was the rationalism and atheism of the Enlightenment, which we summarized previously. The heresy invented to correct it came to be referred to as quietism. Its chief exponent was a Spanish secular priest, a diocesan priest, named Miguel de Molinos, Molinos, who lived from 1640 to 1697. And his work, in which he dealt with this, was titled Spiritual Guide, published in 1675. Pope Innocent XI extracted 68 propositions from that book and condemned them on November 19th, 1687, in the document Celestis Pastor. The documents, we're not going to go through all 60. Extract five points as a summary. Categorical error number 1. Human perfection can only be found in a mental state of total passivity. Categorical error number 2. All other forms of prayer including vocal prayers, devotions, novenas, Eucharistic adoration, were to be discarded because they were distracting obstacles to the need for total inner quiet. Categorical error number 3. This inner quiet was not to be disturbed, even by the effort needed to resist temptation. Categorical error number 4. Evil actions, sin, in other words, committed by a person who has achieved this state of inner quiet, were not sinful and were not immoral. Because it was, he asserted that if the inner will was quiet, then the evil action could only have come from the will of God. Categorical error number 5. A similar lack of concern extended to the error of soteriology, in that the quiet soul was not even to be concerned about the possibility of going to hell. Because if the soul did end up in hell, well, that's God's will, so then it must be accepted. So this effort to correct the extreme rationalism of the Enlightenment was well-intentioned, but as so often happens, Molinos was trying to be creative in his theology, tried to invent something new to solve it. Now, this was unnecessary because we already have the solution in correct church teaching. Both faith and reason are given to us by God and therefore are intrinsically good. They can be misused, but they are not intrinsically evil. They must be used together in harmony with God's will to accomplish the only goal that really matters, which is getting to heaven. In other matters, Pope Innocent believed that holiness could only thrive if it were promoted outside as well as inside of the church. Therefore, he incurred the eternal ridicule of art historians by ordering that all nude statues in the Papal States, even those in museums or just on the street in public buildings, not only those in church, that all nude statues in the Papal State be covered, believing that displays of public nudity could do nothing other than prompt temptations to sin. He also earned the anger of the papal and of the citizens of the Papal State by banning carnival, or Mardi Gras, as we'd say. Other than that, other developments, the Turks, said they'd come back. So the Ottoman Turks had been defeated by Jan Sobieski in the Ukraine, but their army and their interest in Europe did not disappear. Their next opportunity was presented, as so often before, by internal hatreds and conflicts within Christian Europe. In 1681, the Ottoman Empire, Islamic, signed a treaty with the Russian Empire, which was Christian, Russian Orthodox, in which the Ottoman Turks agreed to evacuate Ukraine permanently so that Russia could take it over. The advantage for the Ottomans was that it freed those troops that they had occupying Ukraine for use against the West. The same year, a Protestant Hungarian count named Emmerich Tekeli, Tekeli, led a revolt against the Austrian Habsburg Holy Roman Emperor Leopold I. Tekeli sought help from the Ottoman Turks, who were happy to oblige. They even found financial aid from none other than Louis XIV of France, who saw this as another chance to weaken the hated Habsburgs. So the Turkish invasion of Austria provided the spectacle of Catholic France allied with Protestant Hungarians and Ottoman Turks in a war against Catholic Austrians and Catholic Poles. Following the Danube River, the Turks reached Vienna, the capital of Austria, and laid siege to the city of Vienna on July 13, 1683. The Austrians put up a resolute defense, constantly attacking, sortying out to disrupt the Turkish siege operations. But the Austrians were badly outnumbered, and the Turkish mines succeeded in bringing down a portion of the walls 2 months later, on September 4th. Thinking that the city was theirs, the Turks streamed into the breach, and then it's street-to-street fighting. After 2 hours of merciless hand-to-hand fighting in the streets of Vienna, the Turks retreated back to their camps. But the city was still surrounded. The defenders were brave, but they were exhausted and their supplies were nearly gone. No one had expected the Turks to appear at Vienna when they did, so it took time to respond. Jan Sobieski, King of Poland, by this point, gathered an army consisting of his own Poles plus Bavarians and Saxons, and marched to relieve the city. They arrived a week after the Turks had breached the walls, and immediately launched an attack on September 12th. When the Austrians defending the city saw that they had relief, all their fatigue evaporated and they charged outside of the city. The Turks, caught between two armies who detested them, were hacked to pieces. The few survivors were pursued and slaughtered. This was the last time that the Turks attempted a land invasion of Europe, just as Lepanto had halted the last Turkish attempt to make a naval assault on Europe. Pope Innocent XI died on August 12, 1689. His reign was followed by the 16-month reign of Pope Alexander VIII, and it is to him that we will turn in the next video. So for now, thank you for your attention. This session is adjourned.